and it's called South. It's about an exploration of 100 years ago, and it follows the theme of what makes a hero. Project number 3, get to the point. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, no guests. 100 years ago, the heroes of the day were the Arctic explorers. They were, those of you who were around in the 60s remember the astronauts going to the moon. These men were more like those, except they were gone longer and they were completely out of communication. The British, in particular, made the Antarctic their private domain. I'm going to tell you the story of 3 explorers: Robert Falcon Scott, Ernest Shackleton, and Roald Amundsen. 2 British, 1 Norwegian. Were these explorers heroes? Let's see. The British believed in the wonderful amateur. It was more important to do it in a British fashion. The preferred method of traveling was man-hauling. None of the British knew how to ski. None of the British knew how to drive dogs. None of the British knew how to do anything up here, let alone rest warmly. Thank you. That's animals. Horses were thought to be superior to dogs. After all, you never see it, but you never see an Eskimo driving his horse sled. Because the reason is horses can forage for food. Antarctica. Amundsen, on the other hand, being a Norwegian and having some experience, having already skied across Greenland and had actually done the Northwest Passage across the top of Canada, knew how to use dogs. And he used dogs much as the Apollo astronauts did. He used them in stages. He would go out with 3 sleds with dogs. They would eat, they would be reduced. They'd abandon one, kill a third of the dogs, feed them to the other dogs and to some of the Norwegians, and go on. And they ultimately had one dog sled went all the way to the South Pole and back. But the rap from the British was that he ate the dogs. Let's talk about some of these trips, expeditions. These 3 men spent most of their off-explorer time raising money. They were the fundraisers of the time. And here we have a map of Antarctica. And as you can see, it's oriented properly, north up. Oh, wait a minute. The first expedition was in 1901, and it was led by an unknown Royal Navy lieutenant, Lieutenant Scott. And they went into this area, which is known as McMurdo Sound. And this is a big inlet here, and this is an ice shelf. The ice shelf is probably 20 feet thick. It is essentially the end of a glacier, but it's relatively permanent. There's another ice shelf up here. On this expedition, 3 men made it to about 82 south, which is down to about this point, the pole being about here. So Scott, Shackleton, and a third gentleman made it down there. Scott had an interesting habit. He would arbitrarily decide you weren't worthy. And so he decided that Shackleton wasn't worthy, so he told Shackleton, you wait here, we're going another 2 miles so that we could be further south than you. Yeah. On the way back, Shackleton came down with scurvy. And when they got back to the camp, back here at the McMurdo Inlet, the supply ship was there, and Shackleton was sent home a year early. And Shackleton spent the rest of his life trying to prove that he was worthy. He was driven. However, he had a 2-year head start. on raising expeditions for his next expedition. And Scott said, well, I own this part of the Antarctica, so nobody else can go there. So he secured from Shackleton an agreement that he would not operate west of the 170th parallel, or meridian, which is right about here. So Shackleton decided he would go here to a place called the Bay of Whales and would go up that way. When he got there, the ship couldn't reach the ice shelf. Shackleton thought it could, but the captain said he didn't think so. Shackleton was furious, but being an old sea dog, he said, I can't overrule a captain. So we went back here to where he promised not to go. He sent the captain back to New Zealand with the ship to come back the next year, along with a sealed letter to the authorities saying he's to be relieved and you're to get a new captain. And the captain never quite forgave him for that. Shackleton